1976, Steve Jobs co-founded Apple Computer Inc., a company that aimed to make personal computing a staple of everyday life. His partner, Steve Wozniak, a technical genius, designed the Apple I, a single-board computer sold as a kit for hobbyists. Jobs, with his marketing vision, handled business operations. Working out of Jobs' garage in Los Altos, California, they developed the Apple II, launched in 1977. Unlike its predecessor, the Apple II was a fully assembled personal computer with color graphics, a keyboard, and expandability, making it accessible and appealing to a broader market. Its success, driven by Jobs' focus on a user-friendly design and Wozniak's engineering, established Apple as a pioneer in the burgeoning personal computer industry. By 1980, Apple went public, valued at $1.8 billion, setting the stage for its transformative impact on technology. These are the early Apple stories, as written by the amazing people and colorful personalities that collaborated to make computing what we know it today. Scrooge McDuck. It's from folklore.org. Author Andy Hertzfeld, February 1980. Burrell Smith liked to do intensive design work over Christmas break, so the very first prototype of the very first Macintosh sprung into life in the first month of the new decade, in January 1980. It wasn't really a standalone computer yet, as the prototype resided on an Apple II peripheral card, but it already contained the essential hardware elements of Jeff Raskin's Macintosh dream. A Motorola 6809E microprocessor, 64K of memory, and a 256 by 256 bit-mapped graphic frame buffer, which was hooked up to a cute, tiny 7-inch black and white display. Burrell used the Apple II host to poke values into the memory of the prototype, so he could initialize the control registers and run small programs with the 6809. I went out to lunch with Burrell a few weeks later. Knowing my appreciation for Woz-like hardware hacks, he explained the crazy way that he contrived for the Apple II to talk with the prototype. He didn't want to waste time designing and wiring up hardware to synchronize the memory of the two machines, since that wouldn't be needed by the real product. Instead, he delegated the memory synchronization to the software, requiring the Apple II to hit a special memory address to tell the prototype how many microseconds later to grab the data off the common data bus. It was weird enough to make me interested in seeing if it really worked. By now, Burrell thought that he had the graphics running properly, but he wasn't really sure. He still needed to write some software to try it out. I told him that I'd look into it when I had some time. He gave me a copy of a handwritten page that contained magic addresses that I'd have to use, hoping that I'd get around to it soon. I was used to coming back to the lab at Apple after dinner to see if anything interesting was going on, and working on various extracurricular projects. I had some spare time that night, so I got out Burrell's instructions and wrote an Apple II assembly language routine to do the necessary bit twiddling to transfer whatever was on the Apple II's high-res graphics display to the Mac prototype's frame buffer, using Burrell's unusual synchronization scheme. One of my recent side projects involved using Woz's new one-to-one interleave floppy routines to make very fast slideshows on disks on the Apple II. I had just made one full of Disney cartoon characters that were scanned by Bob Bishop, one of the early Apple software magicians. Bob adored the work of Carl Banks, the Disney artist who specialized in Donald Duck, and he had scanned dozens of Barks Donald Duck images for the Apple II. I selected an image of Scrooge McDuck sitting on top of a huge pile of money bags, blithely playing his fiddle with a big grin on his beak. I'm not sure why I picked that one, but it seemed to be appropriate for some reason. Even though it was starting to get late, I was dying to see if my routine was working properly. And it would be very cool to surprise Burrell when he came in the next day with a detailed image on the prototype display. But when I went to try it, I noticed that Burrell's Apple didn't have a disk controller card, so there was no way to load up my program. Damn. I couldn't shut the computer down to insert the card because I didn't know how to reinitialize the Macintosh board after power-up. Burrell hadn't left the magic incantation for that, so I thought I was stuck and would have to wait until Burrell came in tomorrow. The only other person in the lab that evening was Cliff Huston, who saw the trouble I was having. Cliff was another early Apple employee, who was Dick Huston's, the heroic programmer who wrote the 256-byte Apple II floppy disk boot ROM's older brother, and an experienced, somewhat cynical technician. I explained the situation to him and was surprised when he started to smile. Cliff told me that he could insert a disk controller card into Burrell's Apple II with the power still on without it glitching out, a feat that I thought was miraculous. You'd have to be incredibly quick and steady not to short-circuit any of the contacts while you were inserting it, running the risk of burning out both the Apple II and the card. But Cliff said he'd done it many times before. All that was required was the confidence that you could actually do it. So I crossed my fingers as he approached Burrell's Apple like a samurai warrior, concentrating for a few seconds before holding his breath and slamming the disk card into the slot with a quick staccato thrust. I could barely make myself look, but amazingly enough, Burrell's machine was still running, and the disk booted up so I could load the Scrooge McDuck image and my new conversion routine. And even more surprisingly, my routine actually worked the first time, displaying a crisp rendition of Uncle Scrooge fiddling away on my Mac's tiny monitor. The Apple II only had 192 scan lines, while the embryonic Macintosh had 256. So I had some extra room at the bottom where I rendered the message, "Hi Burrell," in a nice looking 24-point proportional font. By the time I came in the next morning, an excited Burrell had already showed the image to everyone he could find, but then he accidentally reset the prototype somehow and didn't know how to get the image back on screen. I loaded it again so he could show it to Tom Whitney, the engineer VP. I think Jeff was pretty pleased to see his new computer starting to come to life. But I don't think he was very happy about me giving the demo, since he thought I was too much of a hacker and I wasn't supposed to be involved with his pet project.